The officer walks up to your window and says, "You were doing 52 in a 35. You take the ticket, you glance at it for 2 seconds and toss it in the passenger seat. Weeks later, you're standing in court when suddenly the judge notices something strange. The ticket says the violation happened on February 31st, a date that does not even exist. Or maybe the officer wrote the wrong highway, the wrong year, the wrong vehicle color, the wrong statute number. Now the prosecutor looks irritated. Because one wrong number can create a serious problem in a traffic case. But here's the part most drivers never understand. Not every mistake kills the ticket. Some errors are harmless, others can completely undermine the government's case. So how do you know the difference? What should you say in court? And why do prosecutors hate defective citations so much? That's what we're breaking down today. Every video here could save you from a serious mistake one day. Subscribe now so you don't miss what could protect you. Then share this video and drop your opinion below. I want to hear what you think. Because one small error on a traffic ticket can sometimes become the biggest leverage point you have. Most people think traffic court is simple. Officer writes ticket, driver pays fine, case closed. But legally, a citation is still a charging document. It is the government formally accusing you of violating a law. And if that document contains serious factual defects, it can raise questions about accuracy, reliability, and even due process. That does not mean every typo gets a case dismissed automatically, but it does mean details matter. Especially when the mistake affects the core accusation itself. And this is where many drivers make their first mistake. They either ignore the ticket completely or they obsess over tiny, meaningless errors that do not actually matter legally. Here's the difference. If the officer writes your car blue instead of black, courts may call that a harmless clerical error. But if the officer lists the wrong statute entirely, the wrong date, the wrong location, or facts that make the allegation impossible, now you may have something important. Imagine this traffic stop. License and registration. Sure, officer. You cross the center line back there. But officer, this road doesn't even have a center line. Now imagine the ticket later says the violation happened at 11:42 p.m., but your dash cam clearly shows the stop happened at 8:15 p.m. That discrepancy matters because timing can affect evidence, witness credibility, and even whether the officer identified the correct vehicle. And prosecutors know this because traffic court often depends heavily on the officer's credibility and documentation. When documentation starts falling apart, reasonable doubt starts creeping in. Now here's another mistake drivers make. They try to argue the entire case during the roadside stop. That usually does not help. The side of the road is not the courtroom. The officer is gathering information, observing behavior, and documenting statements. The more emotional or argumentative you become, the more material you may hand them. Instead, keep the interaction calm and short. If you notice an obvious mistake, you do not need to debate it right there. You can simply say, "Officer, I understand." Or, "I would like to handle this in court." That matters because you're not admitting guilt, not escalating the situation, and not giving unnecessary statements that could later be used against you. And remember this, many people accidentally damage their own defense by talking too much. The officer says, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And the driver responds, "I was probably doing around 50, but traffic was flowing." That statement can become evidence. Now compare that with a calmer response. "Officer, I prefer not to answer questions about the allegation." Notice the difference. You're staying respectful without volunteering admissions. That distinction matters. Now let's talk about the exact types of errors that can create real legal problems. First, impossible facts. Wrong dates, impossible times, contradictory locations. If a ticket says you committed the violation before the officer even started his shift, that raises questions. If the citation says your offense happened in a different county than the stop itself, that may create jurisdiction issues. Second, incorrect statute citations. This is bigger than many people realize. If the officer cites a law that does not match the alleged conduct, the defense may argue the charging document is defective. For example, imagine someone is accused of speeding, but the citation references a statute dealing with improper lane usage. Now the government may need to amend the citation or explain the discrepancy, and prosecutors don't always enjoy fixing paperwork problems in crowded traffic courts. Now talk about mistaked identity details. Wrong license plate, wrong vehicle model, wrong driver information. Again, not every error destroys the case automatically, but when enough inaccuracies pile up together, the defense can argue the citation itself is unreliable. And reliability matters in court. Now let's talk about one phrase that can become very important during hearings. Your Honor, I would like clarification regarding the accuracy of the citation. Notice how calm that sounds. Not aggressive, not emotional. You're directing attention toward the document itself. That matters because traffic court judges often respond better to organized factual arguments than emotional speeches. Another useful phrase is, the citation appears to contain material inconsistencies. The key word there is material. Material means important enough to potentially affect the validity of the allegation. Not every typo is material. Courts usually don't care about tiny, harmless mistakes, but major factual inconsistencies can become significant. Now let's talk about something else many drivers do wrong. They assume dismissal is automatic. It usually is not. In many states, prosecutors or officers may be allowed to amend certain errors. That means the court could permit corrections. But even then, the mistake can still help the defense. Why? Because corrections may weaken confidence in the officer's observations and documentation, and credibility matters, especially if your evidence contradicts the citation. This is why preserving evidence is critical. Dashcam footage, phone location records, receipts, GPS timestamps, witness statements. All of these can matter if the citation contains questionable details. Imagine this scenario. The ticket says the stop happened at 10:48 p.m. downtown, but your work security records show you clocked out 20 miles away at 10:55 p.m. Now timing becomes important, and suddenly that small typo may not look so small anymore. But there's another trap people fall into. They become disrespectful in court. That is a mistake. You are challenging the evidence, not attacking the judge or officer personally. Stay calm, stay precise, stay professional, because credibility works both ways. Now let's talk about something important. You should never lie in court or fabricate errors that do not exist. Judges see exaggerated arguments constantly. If you point out 10 meaningless typos, you may weaken your credibility when discussing the one mistake that actually matters. Focus on material inconsistencies, facts connected directly to the accusation. Now, during traffic stops themselves, there are also phrases that help protect you without escalating the encounter. For example, I do not consent to any searches. That matters because consent can expand the scope of an encounter. Or, am I free to leave or am I being detained? That clarifies whether the stop is continuing. Or, I would prefer to remain silent. That reduces the risk of accidental admissions. Notice the pattern. Calm, clear, respectful. No sudden movements, no roadside debates, no attempts to win the argument right there. Because the roadside is not where you fight the legal battle. Court is. And court runs on documentation. That's exactly why citation errors matter so much. Now here's a warning many people need to hear. Do not assume internet advice applies universally. Traffic laws vary by state. Procedural rules vary by jurisdiction. Some courts treat citation defects differently than others. In one state, a mistake may be easily corrected. In another, the same issue may carry bigger consequences. That is why this video is educational, not personal legal advice. But the core principle stays consistent almost everywhere. The government must accurately document the allegation, and when important facts are wrong, the defense may have room to challenge the reliability of the case. So here's the safest framework if you ever receive a traffic ticket. Stay calm. Do not argue roadside. Do not admit unnecessary facts.
Preserve evidence immediately. Review the citation carefully. Look for material inconsistencies, not meaningless typos. Challenge errors professionally, not emotionally. And if needed, consult a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction, because sometimes one wrong number can really change the entire case. And in the next video, we're breaking down another mistake drivers make during traffic stops, the one sentence people say thinking it sounds innocent, but officers are trained to use against them later in court.